happens far too often that twists, turns and spoilers get dropped into trailers for games that haven't even been released. Sometimes when you're already sold on something, it's best to take a step back and avoid any more exposure to it. Obviously, unlike the trailers mentioned herein, we're going to be polite and tell you now that this video will contain lots of spoilers. You've been warned. I'm Psy for WhatCulture.com and these are 9 video game endings spoiled by trailers. Number 9. Far Cry 4. The story of Far Cry 4 is centered around protagonist Arye returning to his home country of Karat to spread the ashes of his mother. Upon arriving, however, Arye gets caught up in the eccentric and dangerous world of King Pagan Min and the warring factions of the region. Cue your standard affair of balls out action and insanity. In fact, Far Cry 4's marketing and trailers were all around great and really helped to make it the most successful entry in the series to that point. However, a moment in the game's story trailer shows Pagan Min standing at a shrine with the player, showing they both make it to the end, and indeed where Arye's mother Ishwari sent him as part of her final wishes. I mean, it's not all that surprising that a game's protagonist gets to complete their goal. At least 90% of titles give you a main objective and eventually you fulfill it. That being said, most games don't show you this moment in a trailer before the game is even out. Considering how wild and twisting Far Cry can be, it seems like a strange choice to include a scene from the conclusion of all things in its marketing. Thankfully, Far Cry 4 has multiple endings, so there's still plenty of fun to be had when you get there. Number 8. Sonic Heroes. In the last decade or so, Sonic Team have tried to dial back on the size of the cast in the majority of Sonic titles. In 30 years of adventures, the Blue Blur has made more friends and enemies than we can count, and overstuffing each game with as many as possible felt to some players like diluting what originally made Sonic so great. It was a trend that really started to hit critical mass with Sonic Heroes, which included 12 playable characters, admittedly in groups of 3, but nonetheless. Sonic Heroes' 4 scenarios intersect with each other and drop little clues along the way that Dr. Eggman is perhaps not behind the latest threat on the planet. When the curtain is lifted in the game's conclusion, it's revealed that Metal Sonic is the game's shock big bad. Or at least it would be a shock if not for the fact the game's trailers had shown a silhouette of the character awaiting players at what was clearly the end of the game. Considering Metal Sonic hadn't been seen in a major role since Sonic CD about a decade prior, it would have been a really excellent twist for long-term fans. There's no point trying to put the clues together, however, as the trailer hadn't been shy to show us where it was all leading. Number 7. Persona 5 Royal. It's become the accepted norm for Persona games to release and then be followed up by an expanded edition sometime after. Persona 3 FES, Persona 4 Golden, and the breakout success of the 5th title birthed Persona 5 Royal. You'd think it would be impossible to spoil a re-release, but you'd be wrong. Royal promised new gameplay elements, characters, and even story threads to create the definitive edition that felt fresh to fans. Whilst Persona 5 Royal did its best to show what was new and exciting about the re-release and avoid any major spoilers for its new content, it did slip up briefly by showing that guest party member Crow was suddenly playable in more than the expected areas. In the original game, Crow joins the party for a time before becoming a boss fight at the end of his personal arc and exiting the story. It was a powerful part of the plot that many fans connected with. Persona 5 Royal did an awesome thing by making it possible for Crow to stay with Joker and Powers for the rest of the game, but it wasn't careful enough when it came to keeping this a secret in its trailers from eagle-eyed fans. Number 6. Dead Space. The 2008 survival horror classic Dead Space took us to the darkest corners of the universe to do battle with horrific necromorphs. As is the way with horror, knowing as little as possible is power, and going into a game that's intent on spooking you is much better when you don't know what to expect. Most of the footage we saw from the game brought us to the conclusion that Dead Space would take place entirely on space stations and ships, but one particular moment in the trailer showed otherwise. Not only was there going to be some amount of game that took place under an actual sky, it was going to be a battle against one hell of a monster. That planet was Aegis 7, and that monster turned out to be the final boss of the game. If you remembered this moment from the trailer, and how could you forget it, it was hard not to wonder when it was going to rear its ugly head. It scratched away at the back of many a player's mind as they worked through the campaign. The showdown with the necromorph hive mind is a brilliant crescendo to Dead Space violent, creeping horror that was ruined for some when they saw it in the trailer and knew that it was coming. Number 5. Resident Evil 5. The follow-up to Leon's smash hit Rural Europe adventure saw Resident Evil next take the series to the sun-scorched sands of West Africa. Avoiding hammer-wielding monstrosities and searching for bioterrorists, players were reintroduced to classic characters such as Chris Redfield and Albert Wesker. At this point, it had been about 9 years since Chris's partner Jill Valentine had been seen in a new Resi title, and Capcom decided to unceremoniously kill her off-screen with full-page magazine ads mourning the loss. The reason why? A driving part of Chris's adventure in Resident Evil 5 arrive should be him following a rumour that she was still out there somewhere. The marketing heavily relied on Chris clashing with Wesker, who in the game's final trailer exclaims, "I would have thought you would be happy to see us," as he begins to pull the hood off a battle-hardened female figure. Though stopping just shy of showing her face, there was really no one else it could have been. Telling your audience you've killed a beloved character off when they weren't looking, and then introducing a brand new cloaked and hooded figure is basically putting the peg through the hole before the player gets a chance. Hope you weren't looking to unravel a story of mystery and intrigue as a side order for your waves of infected enemy slaughter, as Capcom made sure to spell it out for you. Number 4. Kingdom Hearts 3. After over a decade of anticipation, as 2019 drew near, Kingdom Hearts 3 could finally be seen on the horizon. Fans speculated what part of the series' complex, also convoluted, storyline would be resolved in what was being excitedly called the conclusion of the Dark Seeker saga. The more trailers that Square Enix dropped, the more at risk they were of exposing the game's story, which culminated in a trailer that upset a good number of fans. Other than revealing that lost Keyblade warrior Aqua had been corrupted by darkness, it also showed a lot of footage from cutscenes of the late game that take place in the Keyblade graveyard. The Keyblade War had been a major part of the series' lore for about 15 years, that was established in Kingdom Hearts 2 and deepened by the game's handheld titles more than its numbered entries. Whilst fans were excited that it was going to be explored in Kingdom Hearts 3 and that they were apparently going to visit the Keyblade graveyard, many were of the opinion that they would have preferred the surprise of seeing it for themselves. It was a moment that had been building for years and had huge ramifications on the franchise's story, but the rug was pulled from Kingdom Hearts fans before they got to put their feet on it. Number 3. S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Shadow of Chernobyl. S.T.A.L.K.E.R. is the sci-fi enthused FPS sleeper hit that drops the player into an alternate reality where the Chernobyl exclusion zone is causing all kinds of mutants and horrors. The player character is generally referred to as the Marked One on account of the fact they wake up with amnesia and only a couple of tattoos to inform their identity and plan of action. One of these reads "Kill S.T.A.L.K.E.R. With nothing else to go on, the Marked One begins to explore the zone and search for this mysterious antagonist. Although the game makes reference to it throughout, the big twist is meant to be that the player character is in fact the man they've been searching for all along. Except this is far less of a surprise if you saw the game's trailer, which ends with a shot of one of the game's many endings that takes place after this revelation. As the trailer closes, S.T.A.L.K.E.R. bemoans, "I want the zone to disappear," and is engulfed in light. Whilst this isn't considered the canonical ending, it is one of many answers that are in line with his personality, and showing any part of a game's conclusion like this in the trailer should be considered banned form. Number 2. Shadow of the Colossus. One of the PS2's timeless classics, Shadow of the Colossus still impresses today with its unique gameplay and moreover its simple but incredible storytelling. Throughout the marketing for Shadow of the Colossus, director Fumito Ueda denied any connections the game had to his earlier work, Ico. It turns out this was for the express purpose of hiding the game's plot, which actually did connect to Ico. Rather unfortunate then that one of the game's extended trailers spelt this out for players that watched it closely. More than just featuring the sleeping Mono stirring from her slumber, which was a very important late game moment, a very brief shot shows our hero wander with horns atop his head. Not only was this a big part of the game's twist of narrative, with the intent being the player's entire perspective shifting at this point, but it was also a hint that Shadow and Ico were more connected than Ueda said. When the final game was released, the theory became pretty watertight, with the horned baby at the end of the game seemingly referring to the curse of the horned infants in Ico. Shadow of the Colossus' story and imagery have always been powerful, and most players recommend their friends go in with as little info as possible. Trailers like this one don't help that mindset. Number 1. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Respawn Entertainment's single-player story-focused game set in the Star Wars universe was a long time coming. It had been a while since the Star Wars series had had a truly great narrative-driven title, and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order's marketing was unavoidable. It was without a doubt one of the most anticipated games of 2019. Fallen Order stars Cal, one of the few survivors of the Jedi slaughter regime that was Order 66. One of the trailers for the game got us close to spoiler territory when it overlaid the iconic breathing sound of Star Wars' greatest villain, but without context it was hard to know exactly what this meant. That was until the next trailer dropped for the title, which ended with exactly what it meant, the very real appearance of Darth Vader. Anakin Skywalker and Luke's father, just to throw a few more spoilers in there, only shows up within the last moments of Fallen Order to give the game the biggest possible baddie to put Cal up against. It sort of comes out of nowhere, but at the same time was a really excellent way to end the title. Still, many can't help but feel it would have had 100 times the impact if we didn't know it was coming. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video down in the comments below, and any other video game trailers you can think of that completely spoiled a game for you. Make sure you like this video, subscribe and hit that notification bell. I've been Psy for WhatCulture, and have a good week.